Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about some three sad movies that I've seen, and one of them I only watched yesterday. The other one I haven't watched in ages. I can't even remember how I felt during the one I watched in primary school. I just remember some really brutal, sad scenes as well. And that movie I watched in primary school didn't have a good ending. The other two at least have some good endings, but this one is just like a complete soul depression tank or something. Just nothing good was just gonna happen towards the end. And then the other one I haven't seen in quite a while, but I do remember a specific moment that made me cry out. But anyways, yeah, let's get started. I can't even remember what I have my list in order, but anyways, I'm just gonna go from the top of my head. Click. Now, Click is the one I watched yesterday. To be honest, I wasn't expecting it to be as sad as it was as well. It was so funny at the start. It was like so funny in the first half. It's like someone making you laugh, and then it switches to complete 180. Someone just kicks you in the balls just out of nowhere, sadness, and that was just so sad. It was so terrible. I think the thing that saved it as well, even though it was so sad, is that it at least had a good ending. I heard the whole thing with Adam Sandler's character, him dreaming up that experience where he basically skipped like 20 years of his life and skipped like his whole life with his family because he couldn't be bothered with them. That was all a dream apparently, but I think as well it said that online, and that it ended up being like some supernatural shit, because when Adam Sandler woke up, the remote with the TV remote to control life was still there, but he just chose not to use it. So it's like he was dying of old age, but then the Grim Reaper, the dude that looks like he's from Back to the Future, he basically just gave him another chance at life. Yeah, like at the start, the Grim Reaper gave him that remote to basically teach him a lesson about family values and shit, and you're supposed to spend any minute with your wife and kids and stuff. And thank God that was a dream. I was just kind of thinking, imagine the movie ended like that. Imagine the movie ended with Adam Sandler trying to reach out to his son, and his son's about to drive off, and then he screams at the top of his lungs, and his deathbed is a homeless man's sleeping area. He's just dying on the ground, and the movie ends like that. Imagine there was like an alternate ending where it just wasn't a dream or anything. It's just that, and then end credits is showing up. That would have been fucking tragic as shit. That was also a scary concept as well. Skipping a year into your life without even realizing, just because you want to skip past the boring parts of your life. It sounds handy at first. The remote does seem like a pretty OP tool as well, but also just seems like, I don't know, it seems like a drug to me, honestly. It seems good at first, but if you keep abusing it, it's gonna come back to, bite you in the ass. And it does end up doing that to Adam, because at first, he's just skipping past the boring stuff. He doesn't want to argue with his wife. He doesn't want to walk the dog for that long. He's skipping past sex as well, bro. He's skipping past one of the greatest times of the day, bro. Sex time. That's the only thing I would say he should not skip past. And then, he ends up skipping 20 years into his life. He ends up skipping to when he becomes a CEO. And during this time when he's skipping, his body in real time is basically on autopilot mode. He's basically like a clankers fresh out the factory, just focusing on work the whole time, a full-time employer's dream pretty much, because all he wants to do is work. He's not really paying attention to his family or anything. But that seems like a scary concept. You can use it for handy stuff, skip past stuff you can't really be arsed with, but the remote remembers, and it doesn't really seem to give a shit, and it becomes sentient, and it seems to skip past all his preferences and all. So every time he's about to argue with his wife, he just skips past that. Every time he's about to do something, when he's ill, that was one of the things he kept on skipping past. Every time he's sick, and his kids will come visit him to the hospital, they're gonna visit a vegetable now, because now he's just gone back into the future. So the remote, it seems powerful, but also just seems like a shit thing as well. It just kind of fucks up your life. But that concept is really sad to me. It's you just miss your whole life, and all. You don't even know where you've been or what's been happening. You just skipped in a couple of years. He becomes a fat potato at some point in the movie when he skips that far. He's rich, but his wife ends up breaking up with him, ends up fucking some other dude, and his life is basically over. So next one is actually A Good Dinosaur. I haven't watched this movie in so long. I watched this movie ages ago when I was living in a completely different house. I wasn't in this gaff when I watched A Good Dinosaur. And A Good Dinosaur, it's a pretty good movie. I can't lie. It's a pretty good animated movie. There was one part though that really made me cry and upset. The scene. When the dinosaur meets the little gnome-sized caveman. When that caveman shows that he lost his parents, that shit made me so upset. It's basically just a little lone child just fending for himself, just surviving against all wilderness, against nature, just defend for himself. He has no mommy and daddy can feed him breakfast or anything. It's just him, nature, and that's it pretty much. That made me like so upset. And it's also there's I think the dinosaur in that movie, he ended up losing his dad, and he ended up being knocked out. He ended up falling asleep. He ended up finding his dad. He was following him. Turns out that shit wasn't real. But yeah, that's really, I can't really remember much from that movie. That's probably like the only thing I can really remember from that movie is the little caveman. He just ends up losing his parents. I just thought that was just so depressing. It's just like no mommy and daddy. And like the dinosaur also ended up losing his parents. Like the dinosaur and the kid basically only had each other in the film. I just remember that shit making me cry. So next one is actually on my final one on my list. Actually, I have basically 3 movies. Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Now, Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I haven't watched it so long as well. I think I watched it in like 6th class. So like it's probably like 9 years ago. I don't fucking know. And I just remember, I don't remember how I felt. That's kind of weird. I do remember like some scenes in the movie that I thought were pretty brutal. It was also just like so, sad. There's like a scene where the butler dude, I can't remember what his name is. Man, it's like Pavel or some shit. I don't know. I think he's some Polish butler that's basically being converted to anorexia because the boys, the Nazis he was like serving, they would barely like feed him any food or anything. They'd basically just feed him nothing. And then there's a scene where he was like pouring in wine for your man, and he actually spills it on the table and onto him. So he just takes it out back and have him executed in the most brutal fashion ever. He just starts beating the fucking shit out of him. He just starts beating the living daylights out of him. He's acting as if like that Polish butler, him pouring the wine all over the table and actually spilling it on him. He's acting as if the Polish butler, hopped up on the table, whipped out his dick and just started pissing all over the place. It's like, bro, it's just like an accident. He just like spilled it a little bit and that's it. And he just took him out and just started beating the shit out of him, going full on Mike Tyson mode on him. Just absolutely fucking belting him around the place. And they probably didn't give a shit. He probably got away with it as well because back in that day, Nazis were more dominant than Jews. And yeah, that was just tragic. Getting beaten to death also just seems like the most brutal way to go out as well. I think that's another scene in Eden Lake as well. And some guy just gets the shit kicked out of them to the point where they're fucking dead. It must have taken him so long. He must have been having so much fun. It's like a sentient punching bag, It's just brutal as shit. Also, another scene, probably the most important one, and probably the most tragic one. This is towards the end, when, I think, I can't remember the main kid's name. Was his name Bruno? I think it was Bruno. Basically, he made friends with this other little kid. I can't remember the other little kid's name, but I remember he's just a little bald kid who's looking for his dad. And then Bruno, he decided, basically going on a little stealth mission, decided to infiltrate the concentration camps to help this kid look for his dad. His dad was not in the concentration camps, that's for sure. He could never find his dad. And then the kid and the kid and the Bruno, they ended up going for a little shower time. And except instead of them having water poured on top of them, they're getting gassed out. Fucking Satan was just farting all over them and killing them with noxious gas. So that was pretty fucking sad and tragic, and that's how the movie ended. I like movies that have realistic endings. They don't always have like Once Upon a Time in they don't always have like fairy tale endings. But it's just so sad and tragic. It's like a punch in the gut. It's just like Bruno and the kid dies. It ends with the family crying. They go to his funeral or whatever. And then the movie just ends. I'm thinking, bro, should just never broke into that concentration camp. You should have just like stayed out of bounds. The worst you would have suffered is a bit of traumatic experience, a bit of losing your best friend. I mean, you can find another best friend, but your parents can't find another you. Pretty much, like once you're dead, you're dead. It's not like they can bring you back to life. It's not like they have the remote from Click and they rewind time and be with you when you're still alive. You're dead. So yeah, bro, really should not risk his life to look for some kid that he barely knew, to look for his dad. He should just stay out of his way. If he would have stayed out of the concentration camp, he would have been alive. It would have been grand for the most part, at least for him and his family. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. I just want to talk about those 3 sad films. Pretty much, I was only gonna do a video on Click because I watched that yesterday. I was thinking that was just so sad, and the road just seems like such a cool concept as well, but also pretty dangerous. But then I also remembered there are other sad movies I've seen. And I just want to make a video talking about those 3 movies. But yeah, see you later.